Hey everybody, so we're going to be talking about angle pairs, but now on a transversal. So remember that transversal is a line that cuts across two or more coplanar lines. All right, I am going to be using color, and I'm going to be using up to 4 different colors. So my first one is we're going to be talking about interior angles. And interior angles, I want you to think about it this way. They're on the inside of the two lines. It's kind of being sandwiched on the inside of the two lines. So it would be 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those would be our interior lines. And then for our exterior lines, I want you to think about it as the ones that are on the outside of the sandwich, the bread essentially. So that would be 1, 2, 7, and 8. All right, and we're going to go down a little bit first. All right, and now when you've got alternate interior and alternate exterior angles. So there's specific types of interior angles. Now you know that our interior angles are 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. So we're working with just 3, 4, 5, 6. And alternate means is that you're going to be essentially across the transversal. And if these lines are congruent, then 3 and 6, if they're parallel, then 3 and 6 would be congruent. 5 and 4 would also be congruent if these two lines right here that are being cut by our transversal were parallel. The same thing can apply here to our exterior angles, and these can be congruent. So we've got our orange, we've got 1 and 8, and then we've got 2 and 7. And these are across, and they're on the outside, they're our exteriors. So they can be congruent if and only if these two lines are parallel. Don't ever assume that they're parallel. And in fact, we're going to go ahead and put a star. You'll notice that I put a little legend down here. We're going to put a star next to these, saying that if the transversal cuts a set of parallel lines, meaning they need to be parallel, then those pairs are congruent. All right, so that's super important. All right, now let's talk about vertical angles. Now, you guys are used to vertical angles. All right, so vertical angles, you don't need parallel lines for it. All right, but they are going to be congruent. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we write down that these are going to be congruent regardless. And we're going to use our words for them later as well. So the first set I have are 1 and 4. These are congruent. And then I've got 2 and 3, which are congruent because they're vertical. And then we've got 5 and 8, they're opposite rays. And then we've got 6 and 7. All right. Next, we have adjacent angles. Now, adjacent angles, we're going to have some overlap here. And this is going back to something we knew from our first chapter. So adjacent angles are right next to each other, kind of like what angles 1 and angle 3 are. But you'll notice that angle 3 is also still adjacent to angle 4. So let me go ahead and use my dots. I'm going to overlap it a little bit just so you guys can see. All right, and these two, they're just going to be supplementary. All right, and you'll notice that I said that these angle pairs are supplementary. We're going to draw a box around them. So I'm going to take this right here, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a box around this so I know that my adjacent angles are going to be supplementary in this case. All right, and we are going to continue, and this time I'm going to keep circling them. So 1 and 2 are adjacent angles, and 2 and 4 are also adjacent angles. All right, that also applies down below We've got 5 and 7 as adjacent, but we've also got 5 and 6 as adjacent. And then that follows that 6 is adjacent to 8. Ooh. But 7 is also adjacent to 8. Pretty much these two are linear pairs, and it's just we're looking at it across the transversal. All right, now let's talk about consecutive angles. So consecutive angles, they're on the inside. Typically, they're interior angles, and typically some people will also say that they're consecutive interior, but you won't always see it like that. So we know that we're working with these. Now, consecutive interior angles are these right here. They're on the same side, all right? You will also see them being referred to as same side interior or same side exterior angles sometimes. So let's just talk about consecutive angles all at once. All right, and these are going to be supplementary if the two lines connecting them are parallel. So we are going to draw our box around it, but we're going to draw it a little bit dashed. All right, these are supplementary. Oops, too many. If and only if the two lines are parallel. All right, so let's talk about our consecutive interior ones first. The interior ones are going to be 3 and 5, and that pair is going to be supplementary if those two lines are parallel. You've also got our 4 and 6. These are our other interior ones. Again, you might also see them written as same side angles, so same side interior or same side exterior. They're both the same. They mean the exact same. We've also got 1 and 7, and then 2 and 8. Remember, if the two lines are parallel, then these pairs are going to be supplementary. All right, our last one here is corresponding angles. So pretty much what I want you to think of, and what helps me remember this and distinguish it from consecutive, is I want you to think copy, paste. Pretty much you're taking this one right here, you're copying it and pasting it exactly there if these two lines are parallel. So we're going to put our star here. If these two lines are parallel, then they're going to end up being congruent. It's going to be a copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, and lastly, copy, paste, and they are congruent. All right, so here are all of the angle pairs that you're going to be using from this point forward. It's a lot, and it's a little bit more than what you've learned before, but we can do this. All right, and in fact, I am going to show you some of the postulates that we're going to be needing. So let me go back to that. Sorry, guys. So our first set of postulates are our alternate interior and our alternate exterior angle postulates. So if a transversal intersects two parallel lines, then the alternate interior angles are congruent. And that same thing applies to our alternate exterior angles because they're on the outside, as long as our transversal is intersecting two parallel lines. Then our alternate exterior angles are going to be congruent. Right? And now we're going to move on to our same side interior and our same side exterior. Remember, these can also be known as consecutive interior angles or consecutive exterior angles. So if a transversal intersects two parallel lines, then same side interior angles are going to be supplementary. And that's what we were talking about on the front. And those same blanks apply here. And if you need to pause it and kind of fill this in, you totally can. And lastly, we've got our corresponding angles theorem. So if a transversal intersects two parallel lines, then corresponding angles are congruent. And that's what we were talking about. If we can do the copy-paste, we can only do the copy-paste and remember that they're congruent if the two lines are parallel. Right? So now we're going to go ahead and work through some of these examples. So given that line L is parallel to M, solve for the variables below. So they're giving us some very important information. They're telling us that line L is parallel to M, so we need to draw in our parallel symbols, just like our congruency marks. All right? And now it's saying if the measure of angle 3 is 3x minus 50, so this one right here is 3x minus 50, and the measure of angle 7 is 2x, this one right here, what is the value of x? Well, first you have to think about what kind of relationship that they have, and these are corresponding angles, which means we can go ahead and do our copy-paste since both of these lines are parallel. And because they're parallel, we can set the measure of angle 3 equal to the measure of angle 7. And then we're going to solve it each of 3x minus 50 equals 2x. And you know what? Typically, I would like to move my lighter x, but in this case, it's going to be easier for me to move the 3x over. So now I have negative 50 is equal to negative x. Well, I'm looking for a positive x. So negative x is equal to negative 50, and I'm looking for a positive x. Then it's going to equal a positive 50. All right, now we're going to use that same strategy for B. All right, now we've got the measures of angle 1, which is 2y plus 50, and the measure of angle 8, which is 3y minus 20. Well, we're going to have to think about this. And you'll notice, actually, that these are our same side exterior, or consecutive exterior. Which means, because both of these lines are parallel, we can say that they are supplementary. And that means the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 8 is going to equal 180 degrees. So let's drop those in. Now we've got 2y plus 50 equals 3y, adding 3y minus 20 is going to equal 180. Combine your like terms and you're going to get 5y minus 30 equals 180. I'm at 5y sorry, plus 30, and then I'm going to subtract 30. I get 150 divided by 5, and I'm going to get y is equal to 50. All right, so that's our first example. Now we're going to go ahead and do our second example. And don't freak out. I know it looks like a lot, but you're just going to take it easy. As long as you know what the relationships are, then you should be fine. All right, so start off with what you know. We know that these two lines right here are parallel. Okay, so we've got one transversal here. Let's focus on that one first. And let's look at the relationships we have with this 120. It is vertical with G, so we know that it's going to be 120 degrees because both of those lines are parallel, so therefore they are congruent. And we're going to write vertical. All right, now we can also look back and see that angle B is a corresponding angle, which means it's a copy-paste because both of those lines are parallel, and it's 120 degrees. So we're going to write down that it's corresponding. You want to typically make sure that you're like, oh, it's vertical or corresponding to the 120, so you know which one it is. Because once we get to D, you'll notice that angle D is vertical to angle B, and that's why it's going to be congruent and going to equal 120 degrees. So we're going to say that it's vertical to angle B. There we go. All right, so we've got a lot figured out, and now you can use that to figure out quite a few things. You can see that A is supplementary to B, but it's also C is also supplementary to B, and you could figure that out by doing 180 minus 120. You could also say that F is supplementary to 120, and then say that this is a corresponding, C is corresponding with F, and A is alternate exterior with F. There are a lot of different ways. You want to pick the one that works for you. What I am going to do is I'm going to give you the measurements, and I want you to upload your reasonings for each of them. So we should get 60 here as well. And for 90, think about this second transversal here and what kind of relationship it has with this angle. Don't forget, I need you to go ahead and include your reasonings right here and upload a picture. Thanks for watching.